Moving day was supposed to be the start of everything. Instead, Amanda stood on the front porch of the house she bought with her own savings, staring at a door that would not open. Her key was useless. From behind the glass, her mother-in-law Sandra just smiled, a slow, deliberate smirk, and mouthed two words, family property. What Sandra did not know was that the deed was already recorded. It carried exactly one name, and it was not hers. But Sandra had no idea what Amanda had in her hand. Amanda was 30, a nurse who bought that house with her own money before the wedding. Her mother-in-law Sandra moved in to help, but by sunset, the locks were changed and a realtor was already on the phone. Sandra believed family meant ownership. Amanda was about to teach her what the law actually says. To understand how a mother-in-law could stand in a doorway and feel no shame, you have to rewind 2 years before that lock clicked shut. Back when Amanda first met Daniel at a hospital fundraiser. She was a pediatric nurse. He was an architect who spent his weekends sketching houses he hoped to build one day. They fell hard and fast, the kind of love that makes you believe in second chances. But the only shadow in their future was Daniel's mother, Sandra. Sandra had opinions about everything. The venue, the guest list, the dress. She would smile sweetly and say things like, "Oh, I'm sure you meant the ivory, not the champagne, darling." Every choice Amanda made, Sandra had a correction. Daniel saw it but always said the same thing. "She's just excited, she'll settle down once we're married." Amanda wanted to believe him. 6 months before the wedding, Amanda found the house. A three-bedroom craftsman on a tree-lined street, 30 minutes from the hospital. She had been saving since she graduated nursing school, putting away a little from every paycheck. She never touched it, not for vacations, not for emergencies. That money was for something permanent. She made the down payment entirely on her own, and when the mortgage was approved, the deed was placed in her name only. It wasn't a slight against Daniel. It was simply the truth. She bought it, she owned it. Daniel understood. Sandra did not. The first time Sandra saw the house, she walked through the front door and said, "Well, it's cozy, but I suppose it'll do for now." Then she immediately started rearranging furniture, as if she were the one who would be living there. Amanda let it go because she knew Daniel wanted peace. But the pattern was set. Sandra viewed the house not as her daughter-in-law's accomplishment, but as a family asset she had a right to manage. Moving day arrived on a warm Saturday in early June. Amanda had taken the week off work. She and Daniel had packed their apartment into cardboard boxes, labeling each one in black marker, kitchen, bedroom, nursery, because they were already hopping for a child. Sandra showed up at 9 in the morning with coffee and pastries, wearing a floral blouse and an expression of eager authority. "You take the first truckload," she told Amanda. "I'll stay here and start unpacking the kitchen. It'll save us so much time." Amanda hesitated. Something about the offer felt off, but Daniel was already nodding. "That's a great idea, Mom, thanks." So Amanda drove away with a U-Haul full of furniture, leaving her mother-in-law alone inside the house she had bought with her own money. She was gone for 2 hours. When she returned, the locks had been changed. Her key, the only key she had been given at closing, slid in but would not turn. Through the window, she could see her boxes pushed into a corner, and on the dining room table, a stack of papers with a real estate company logo. Sandra appeared behind the glass, smiling that same tight, cold smirk. She pointed to a handwritten note taped to the inside of the door. 3 words in capital letters, family only. No TRSPSSERS. Amanda's heart pounded, but she did not scream. She did not cry. She just stood there, processing the fact that her mother-in-law had secretly contacted a realtor to list a house she did not own. Inside, Sandra was on the phone with that realtor, speaking in a low, urgent voice. She thought she was in control. She thought Amanda would break down, call Daniel, and start a fight she couldn't win. What Sandra did not know was that Amanda had done something just as quietly weeks earlier, something she kept even from Daniel, because she never imagined she would need it. Amanda backed away from the door, walked calmly to her car, and opened the glove box. Inside was a manila envelope she had picked up from the county recorder's office the day before. It contained a certified recorded copy of the deed. Her name, and only her name, stamped in black ink. She tucked it under her arm and dialed a number she never thought she would call. The sheriff's deputy answered on the second ring. "I need to report an illegal lockout," Amanda said. "There's a trespasser inside my home." Then she added very softly, "And she has no idea what's about to happen." The sheriff's deputy arrived 20 minutes later. His name was Officer Reeves, a calm man in his 50s who had seen more family feuds than he cared to count. Amanda met him on the front walk and handed over the deed without a word. He studied it, nodded once, and walked to the door. Sandra was still standing there, arms crossed, her floral blouse crisp and her smile now replaced by a tight, defensive scowl. "Ma'am," Officer Reeves said, "I have a recorded deed here that lists Amanda as the sole legal owner of this property. You are not on the title. That means you are currently trespassing. I need you to open this door and step outside." Sandra's expression flickered from outrage to disbelief. "That's ridiculous," she said, her voice rising. "I'm her mother-in-law. I've been living here helping with the move. This is a family matter, not a police matter." She tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. "Amanda, tell him this is a misunderstanding." Amanda didn't move. She simply stood beside the deputy, the deed still in her hand, staring at Sandra through the glass. Her voice was steady. "You changed the locks on my house without my permission. You contacted a realtor to list my property for sale. That's not a misunderstanding, that's fraud." Sandra's face went pale. She hadn't expected Amanda to know about the realtor. The papers on the dining room table, the listing agreement, the contact number, the hastily written notes had been left in plain sight. In her arrogance, Sandra had assumed Amanda would never get inside to see them. Officer Reeves repeated his instruction. "Open the door now, or I will have to escalate this. You have 60 seconds." The lock clicked. Sandra opened the door just a few inches as if still trying to control the threshold. "I was only protecting what's rightfully the family's," she said, her tone now pleading, calculated. "Daniel will never stand for this. He'll tell you the same thing." But Daniel had just pulled into the driveway. He'd gotten Amanda's text, a single line, "Come home now, your mother locked me out." He walked up the path, saw the deputy, saw the deed in Amanda's hand, and saw his mother's face. The pieces clicked together before anyone spoke. "Mom, what did you do?" His voice was quiet, heavy. He wasn't angry yet, he was trying to understand. Sandra launched into a rehearsed explanation. "I was protecting your future, Daniel. This house was supposed to be a family home, not just hers. She thinks she can buy it and keep it all to herself. I was making sure you wouldn't be left with nothing." She gestured to the papers on the table as if they proved her point. Amanda walked inside, past Sandra, and picked up the papers. They weren't just notes. They were a fully executed listing agreement, already signed by Sandra in her own name, with a targeted sale priced $200,000 above what Amanda had paid. The realtor's name was printed at the top, Marissa Cole, a local agent Sandra had apparently known through a church group. There were staging recommendations, open house dates, even a proposed closing timeline, all scheduled to move forward the following week. Amanda held them up for Daniel to see. "She wasn't just locking me out, she was selling the house, without my knowledge, without my signature. She was going to take the money and disappear." Daniel took the papers. He read them slowly. His hands trembled. He looked at his mother, and for the first time in his life, he didn't make an excuse. "You were going to sell Amanda's house, the house she bought with her own savings, while she was still unpacking." Sandra tried to reach for him, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I did it for you. Everything I've ever done has been for you. She's trying to turn you against me." But Daniel pulled away. Officer Reeves stepped forward. "Ma'am, you have two choices. You can gather your personal belongings and leave voluntarily within 45 minutes, or I can place you under arrest for trespassing and attempted fraud." "What's it going to be?" Sandra stared at the deputy, then at Amanda, then at her son. Her jaw tightened. Somewhere behind her eyes, a calculation was running, a cost-benefit analysis of compliance versus chaos. She finally nodded, but it wasn't surrender, it was a tactical retreat. "Fine," she said, her voice ice. "I'll get my things, but you haven't heard the last of this." She turned and walked toward the guest room where she had been staying, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Amanda and Daniel stood together in the living room, surrounded by boxes. The house that was supposed to be their sanctuary felt like a battlefield. Officer Reeves remained by the door, watching. The realtor's listing papers lay on the dining table like a smoking gun. Then Amanda noticed something else among Sandra's papers. A second document, printed on the same real estate company letterhead, with a date from 3 days earlier. It wasn't just a listing agreement. It was a preliminary purchase offer, already drafted, contingent only on a walkthrough. Sandra hadn't just been planning to sell, she had found a buyer. The name on the offer was listed as Sandra Peterson, acting as family representative. And the closing was set for the end of the week. Amanda held it up. "Daniel, she found a buyer. She was going to close on our house before we even finished unpacking." The weight of that revelation settled over the room. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated. His mother had been orchestrating a theft for weeks, right under their noses. Daniel's face went blank, then hardened. He walked to the guest room door and pushed it open. His mother was frantically stuffing clothes into a suitcase. "You found a buyer," he said, his voice flat. You were going to sell the house and then what? Take the money and run. Were you ever going to tell me? Sandra didn't look up. I was going to give you your share. She doesn't deserve all of it. Daniel laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. My share? I didn't pay a dime, Mom. I didn't sign any papers. This was Amanda's house and you were stealing it. There's no share, there's only a crime. And at that moment, the doorbell rang. Through the front window, Amanda could see a woman in a blazer carrying a clipboard. It was Marissa Cole, the realtor. She had arrived for what she thought was a standard pre-listing consultation. Sandra had scheduled her to come at the exact same time she'd sent Amanda away. The trap was closing, but not on the person Sandra intended. Amanda opened the door. Marissa Cole, the realtor, stood on the porch with a polished smile and a folder tucked under her arm. She looked past Amanda and saw the deputy, the scattered boxes, the tension. The smile faltered. I'm here for the listing consultation, she said, uncertain. Sandra Peterson scheduled this appointment 3 weeks ago. She said she was the homeowner. Amanda stepped aside so Marissa could see the dining table, the listing agreement already bearing Sandra's signature, the preliminary offer. She is not the homeowner, Amanda said. I am, that's my deed. She was trying to sell my house without my knowledge. Marissa's face went through a rapid sequence, confusion, horror, professional dread. She opened her folder, flipped through the documents, and pulled out a copy of what Sandra had sent her, a deed of trust that listed Sandra as sole owner. It was a forgery, a crude one with mismatched fonts and a notary stamp from a woman who, upon later investigation, did not exist. She emailed me this, Marissa said, her voice shaking. She said she inherited the property from a deceased husband. I ran a title search, but it hadn't updated yet. I thought it was a clerical delay. I was supposed to bring the official listing paperwork today. She looked at Officer Reeves, then at Amanda. I would never knowingly list a home that wasn't hers. I'm so sorry. In the guest room, Sandra was still stuffing clothes into a suitcase, her movements frantic. She had heard the conversation. She knew the realtor was now a witness. Her carefully constructed plan was collapsing, and she was running out of time. Officer Reeves walked to the hallway and called out, Mrs. Peterson, you now have 40 minutes remaining. I suggest you focus on your personal property and leave the paperwork. He turned to Marissa. I'll need copies of everything she sent you. This is now a criminal investigation. Daniel stood frozen in the living room, the forged deed in his hand. He stared at his mother's signature on the fraudulent document, a signature that looked exactly like the ones on his childhood birthday cards. The same loops, the same slant. His mother had not just schemed, she had meticulously planned to steal his wife's home, had used his dead father's name to fabricate ownership, had lied to him every single day for weeks. He walked into the guest room. Sandra wouldn't look at him. How long? He asked. How long have you been planning this? She kept folding a blouse, her hands trembling. Since the day she told me the house was in her name only. I knew then. She was going to take everything from you. I had to protect you. Protect me? Daniel's voice cracked. You forged a deed. You found a buyer. You scheduled a closing while we were still moving in. That's not protection, that's theft. You were going to take hundreds of thousands of dollars and leave my wife homeless. And you did it all behind my back, expecting me to thank you. Sandra finally met his eyes. There was no remorse there, only fury. I did it because you were too weak to secure your own future. You let her walk all over you. I was the only one willing to fight. Daniel stepped back as if she had struck him. The silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of a clock on the wall and the soft sound of Amanda comforting Marissa in the next room. Then Daniel spoke, his voice very quiet and very final. You're not my protector. You're the person who just tried to destroy my marriage. You're done. When you walk out of this house, I don't want to see you again. Not for a long time. Sandra's mask cracked. Her lips trembled. You don't mean that, I'm your mother. You stopped being my mother the moment you forged a deed and tried to sell the roof over my head. Amanda appeared in the doorway. She held up her phone. I've recorded everything. The deed, the forged document, the realtor's statement, the deputy's report. If you ever try anything like this again, I will press charges so fast you won't have time to pack a toothbrush. Do you understand? Sandra said nothing. She zipped her suitcase, lifted it, and walked past them into the living room. Officer Reeves handed her a written trespass warning. You are officially banned from this property. If you return, you will be arrested. Do you understand, ma'am? Sandra nodded, a single sharp motion. But before she walked out the door, she paused and turned to Amanda. What she said next wasn't a threat. It was a confession, delivered with the cold clarity of someone who had nothing left to lose. You think you've won, she said. But I already took out a home equity line of credit in your name. I used your information from the mail I intercepted. The papers should be finalizing today. So even if you keep the house, you'll be paying for a loan you never signed. You can't evict me from that. The room went still. Amanda's blood ran cold. A home equity line of credit, a HELOC, could be worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. If Sandra had somehow obtained her social security number and personal details from stolen mail, the damage was already in motion. Marissa gasped. Daniel looked at his mother with utter disbelief. Officer Reeves immediately radioed for a detective and financial crimes unit. Amanda didn't scream. She didn't cry. She walked to her laptop, opened her banking app, and checked her credit report. A new inquiry appeared, dated that morning. A lender she had never contacted. Her stomach dropped. Sandra had done it. The woman wasn't just a trespasser, she was a full-blown identity thief. Freeze your credit, Marissa said, her real estate experience suddenly useful. Call the lender now, you can stop it before funds disperse. Amanda dialed the number on the screen. The clock on the wall was no longer counting down Sandra's departure. It was counting down the minutes before a fraudulent loan would drain her equity. Daniel took his mother's arm. You're staying right here until this is resolved. And if you try to leave, I'll let the deputy arrest you for everything. He had never spoken to her like that. Sandra flinched as if slapped. The lender answered. Amanda explained, rapid fire. Fraudulent application, intercepted mail, forged documents. The representative put her on hold. The seconds stretched. Sandra stood in the center of the room, suitcase at her feet, her face a mask of faded defiance. The deputy now had his hand on his cuffs. Everyone waited. Finally, the representative returned. The application had been flagged for manual review due to several discrepancies. No funds had been released. The account was being frozen. Amanda would need to file a police report, but she had stopped it barely. She hung up. The house exhaled. Sandra's last weapon had been neutralized. She had nothing left. Officer Reeves spoke. Mrs. Peterson, you're now facing potential charges for trespassing, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. You can leave now, but expect a visit from detectives within the week. Sandra picked up her suitcase. She walked out the door without another word. The realtor followed, apologizing again to Amanda and promising to assist with any legal documentation against Sandra. The deputy left his card and a case number. Amanda and Daniel stood alone in their living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes, forged deeds, and the ghost of a mother who had tried to dismantle their lives. Daniel sank onto the couch, buried his face in his hands, and wept. The woman who raised him had been exposed as a criminal, and there was no coming back from it. But the house was quiet now. The locks were changed again, this time by a locksmith the deputy recommended. Amanda put the real deed in a fireproof safe. The fraudulent documents went into a sealed evidence bag. And as the sun set on that disastrous moving day, Amanda held Daniel's hand and realized the truth. The family Sandra had tried to steal was not just a house. It was the two of them, and they were still standing. But the real question was whether they could ever feel safe in their own home again, or if Sandra's final act of malice would cast a shadow too long to outrun. Weeks that followed were a blur of legal filings, police interviews, and the slow, painful process of reclaiming not just a house, but a sense of safety. The detective assigned to the case, a sharp-eyed woman named Lieutenant Harris, uncovered more than anyone expected. Sandra hadn't just forged one deed. She'd attempted the same scheme with a vacant rental property 6 years earlier, targeting a distant cousin who never pressed charges. There was a pattern hidden from family, protected by shame. Amanda and Daniel filed a formal report with the district attorney's office. Forgery, attempted grand theft, identity fraud, trespassing. Each charge stacked on the last, creating a legal wall between Sandra and their future. But the DA offered a deal. If Sandra entered a monitored mental health program and signed a legally binding no-contact order, she would avoid jail time. They agreed. Not out of mercy, but because Daniel needed to know, one day, that he had done everything possible before walking away forever. The no-contact order was filed on a Thursday. Daniel sat in the courthouse hallway after the hearing, his hands shaking. He hadn't spoken to his mother since she walked out with her suitcase, but he had carried her voice in his head for 30 years. Letting go was not an event. It was 1,000 tiny decisions, made daily to choose his wife, his home, his own judgment over the woman who had tried to poison it all. He postponed contact with her for a year. Then he extended it indefinitely. Some wounds need silence to close. The house became a home, slowly. Amanda repainted the front door a deep ocean blue, a color she had always loved, a color Sandra had once dismissed as too bold. Every stroke of the brush felt like a declaration. She planted a garden in the backyard, a chaos of wildflowers and herbs, nothing like the rigid, controlled landscaping Sandra preferred. The rooms filled with their books, their art, their laughter. The silence after Sandra was no longer empty. It was peaceful. But there was one detail still waiting to surface, something that would reframe the entire betrayal. 3 months after Sandra's departure, Amanda was cleaning out the attic, a cramped space she'd avoided because of the bad memories. Tucked behind a beam, she found a manila envelope that wasn't hers. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all sent to Sandra by a private investigator. Sandra had been investigating Amanda for over a year before the wedding. She had compiled a dossier, old addresses, credit reports, even medical records. The PI had flagged Amanda's property purchase months before she'd even closed on the house. Sandra had known the exact date the deed would record. She had planned the lockout with military precision, using the PI's reports to time her attack. Amanda sat on the attic floor, reading through the investigator's invoices. Sandra had spent thousands of dollars trying to find leverage, some secret that would nullify Amanda's ownership or destroy her credibility. She found nothing, because there was nothing to find. So she invented a forgery and a HELOC instead. The depth of the obsession was staggering, but it also confirmed what Amanda had long suspected. This was never about the house. It was about control. And when Sandra couldn't control Amanda, she tried to erase her. That night, Amanda showed Daniel the envelope. He read every page in silence, his face unreadable. When he finished, he simply said, she was never going to stop. It wasn't a question. He walked to the fireplace, the one they never used, and burned the dossier page by page. Not out of anger, out of closure. The firelight flickered across their faces. Amanda knew the truth now. The worst betrayals don't always come from enemies. Sometimes they wear the faces of family, smiling sweetly while they change the locks. But a house isn't defined by the people who try to take it. It's defined by the people who fight to make it a home. And as the last page curled into ash, Amanda looked at Daniel and knew that they had done something harder than winning a legal battle. They had chosen each other, fully, without the shadow of someone who never deserved to be called family. Some stories don't end with a courtroom verdict or a dramatic arrest. They end in the quiet moments afterward, when you realize the person who should have protected you was the one who stole your peace. Amanda and Daniel didn't just reclaim a house. They reclaimed the right to decide who belongs inside their walls. And they learned that a deed is more than paper. It's a boundary that says, this is mine and you cannot rewrite that. The question that lingers is this: how many families have a Sandra in the shadows, smiling and scheming, waiting for the right moment to take what isn't theirs? Maybe you felt that unease, the instinct that someone close to you sees your success as a threat. Amanda's story is extreme, but the lesson is universal. Protect what's yours. Trust but document. Love but don't be blind. Because the people who try to change the locks are often the ones you already gave a key. If this story hit close to home, please take a second to like and subscribe, and drop your location plus local time in the comments below. I love knowing where in the world you're listening from right now. And if you've ever faced a betrayal like this, share your story. You never know who needs to hear they're not alone. I'm your narrator. This is the story of Amanda, Daniel, and the mother who tried to steal a home, and how they took it back, one lock at a time. Thank you for listening.